So what's going on, Tim? What's happening?
Well, I'm glad to be connecting with you. Um,
Yeah.
I've been really enjoying your offerings for the last few months, and yeah, kind of my journey has been funny with non-duality.
Do tell.
Yeah, it was very similar to you. I heard your story a bit with being like crazy about spirituality, and but it was all about like me,
Yeah.
like and I would hear non-duality, and something in me was like, yes. And
Yeah.
then another part of me was so resistant, and I wouldn't even hear what they were saying in hindsight. I
Yeah.
like interpret
Yeah.
interpret it in a way that was like appalling to me.
I used to smack the computer, you know what I'm saying, and almost wanted to throw away the laptop, right? The MacBook. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny how it can hit a nerve like nothing else. And but then, so I've been with like an embodied awakening tantra kind of
Yeah.
teacher and community, and that's awesome. But it's kind of way on like the feminine side and the embodiment side, and I was misinterpreting that, like I swing from one direction to another, and I got once again to where I was like, it was a me
Yeah.
spirituality,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the non-duality message like hit me square,
Yeah.
and it was just what I needed to hear, and it's the only thing that makes sense to me right now.
Yeah. Isn't it funny, right? Like all of these, branches of the wrong tree, so to speak. There's no tree, right? It's just like you
Yeah,
think that's all connected and everything, the lineage and embodiment and all that kind of stuff. And then it's just, apparently one day you're like, what the hell?
yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
And as my process deepens, I don't know how else to say it, but I was like feeling that checkmate, that cornered feeling of like really kind of knowing that the awakening is not the humanness waking up,
Yeah.
the him, but it was awakeness itself, and that everything I could do would be like trying to become the awakened Tim.
Yeah. It's
And
kind of
so,
silly now if you really look at it, right? Like how can a concept awaken? How can a thought become awake, right? And it's just yeah, it was just really confusing, at that time because I thought that I awakened. Emerson thought that he woke up, right? And in
yeah,
in that time, right? And of course, thought changes. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not real. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So I was maintaining that thought for a long, long time. And I'm sure you've done that too, if you have very similar. And
yep,
it's like the deepest, rung of suffering is maintaining that.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like the if you know what I mean, right? It's just like
yeah.
what the
Oh, it was torture and pressure, and like even in my it's called Trillium Awakening. In that they were recognizing like something going on, right, and called it awakening. And I knew that something had definitely shifted, and there was a few like experiences that were just unexplainable, something
yeah.
going on. And but at the same time, I just kept feeling like I was going deeper into separation.
Yeah. It's like looking for sobriety and doing different shots of alcohol. I'm like, maybe this will get me sober. This will get me sober.
Right? Yeah,
I heard there's this
Yeah,
absinthe drink that gets, but it's still alcohol. It's still
right.
intoxication. Yeah.
I relate to that 100%. I'm a recovery guy.
Yeah, you get it,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Oh, yeah.
it's just it's like going to a bar hoping to be sober and looking for the right bartender to get you sober.
Yeah. 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 It must be the preparation and the serving of the drinks that's making them
Exactly.
dangerous.
And then you look up to all of these bartenders, you know what I'm saying? But all of them just get you drunk. They don't get you
Mhm.
sober.
Mhm. Totally.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny. Like I think I bounced into you at some point before all this, and I had my like judgments towards the non-duality people.
Oh yeah. Did you leave
Uh,
me nasty messages on my YouTube?
no,
Okay, okay.
I've never. All of mine, all of mine took place in my ear, in between my ears, and yeah, but it's funny. Like the ones that I remember bouncing off of are the ones that I now totally love,
Yeah.
and it's the whole thing, all of what we just said, and I think too, like a lot of my identification comes from when I was little. Like I was spiritual,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I knew that would be my value, and even in the family. And a light enlightened Tim is awakened Tim is like
The
being a
ultimate Tim.
yeah like the professional baseball player of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
spirituality, and also for myself, like what I wanted without knowing really what it was all about. And so there's the good guy identity and the spiritual identity that are
Oh yeah.
pretty core. Like without those, I wouldn't even know what life was for, even though
Yeah.
it's starting to unravel now. And
But isn't it this it the good guy identity and the spiritual identity is it's the prison. It's the
big
prison.
time,
And
big
that's
time.
that's what I thought I had is we have very similar story when I was a little kid I would sing to Jesus, and all that kind of stuff and read the Bible and um I was in a sports team. I was not really good at it, you know what I'm saying? Just a whole bunch of stuff that I was not good at. But I'm like, but spiritually I'm superior, you know?
Yeah, that's that's my story. I sucked at everything that seemed to be valued by society, and
Yeah.
but I was gonna ace this thing and
That's
show them.
right. Yeah. And that's the biggest prison, right? It's because you
Oh,
you keep on building and building and building prison until you can't get out because it's just you're in the middle of it. You're
yeah.
in this, what do you call those, kind of like, like that prison cell that it's just when they
Oh,
when
solitary confinement.
yes, you have put yourself in a solitary confinement, right? In
Yeah,
spirituality and your thoughts basically about what reality is or what
yeah.
enlightenment is and everything. And here you are in the dark, in a blindfold, thinking that you can
Oh,
see.
it's so torturous and imprisoned. And it's like I do the same thing to everyone else. There's this pressure and criticalness to be awake or to awaken, and then I'm judging everybody based on the same thing that ah, and it's just like, what the fuck is going on here? Like,
That's what I
ah,
did. That's what I did is like I just kept on climbing the spiritual ladder, kind of like the corporate ladder, to look down on people. I'm
yeah,
here, you're there.
oh, totally, man.
And
Even
cloying
with my
everyone
mom,
just to get to the
oh,
top, right? Like I would, yeah, I would give my dad books. I'm like, you know what? I see
yeah,
that you have a lot of anger. And here's a book, to keep you. Of course, when he would not accept it, I'll be angry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought that my family was, very judgmental, and so I made sure made sure I judged them for that. It's just so bizarre, like how bound up and twisted it can all get in this pursuit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I've been feeling more and more relief, and I
Yeah.
re- I related to your story, and also like just your laughing and not taking yourself too seriously.
How
So
can you?
appealing to me.
You know, you can't. It's so funny, right? Because when you get into that position again that I'm right and everything's wrong, then you're back in the
Yeah,
game. You're back in the prison, right? It's kind of like,
yeah,
and it's so absurd to be talking that there's no one here. That's why I laugh all the time, right? Because it's just a really absurd, and it's like you're in the joke.
yeah, yeah, yes. And I love that because I've been the opposite for so long, where it was so, it needed to be special, needed to be important, and then took myself so serious. And I actually lost the ability to cry
Oh,
and
we're
to
the
laugh.
same, man. We're just the same. Go ahead, tell me, tell me, tell me. Yeah.
Yep. And like in AA meetings, I would, because I was like the recovery 12-step ninja, like I was like,
You're gonna ace this. Yeah.
yeah. And I would watch like these simpletons, right, in my head, just cry at their celebration with gratitude. And part of me was judging them, but then like a more quiet part was so jealous. Like
Yeah,
I just
yeah, yeah.
cry. I just I would trade knowing anything to just genuinely cry or belly laugh. And yeah, it's really,
I was jealous of the belly laugh before because I took myself too seriously, because I became this idea of superiorness where I was serious, and I would watch some friends just belly laugh at like the most ridiculous, videos or whatever, and I can't seem to get it. I was like, what is wrong? And I would have to watch movies that made me cry to cry, and I thought
yeah,
that there was something wrong with me, and I'm like, what is going on? But again, that idea of superiority, right? It was just like it backfired, right? Because I'm supposed to be meditated, supposed to be calm, but that was almost like a prison cell,
yeah,
like
big
the
time.
aliveness, the humanness, you know what I'm saying? And it became an idea that was supposed to be rejected.
Yeah,
And what was really off is that I've said this many times, is when things were falling apart. Here was like supposed to be an enlightened state, right? And everything is falling apart. And then my mom, was going through life-threatening, brain surgery. And I'm meditating through it, meditating, and I was like, I just really need to go to a bar and and cry it out and everything. So I was kind of like, and then of course when I went to the bar, of course that became my meditation. Right? It was just ridiculous. I was like, here I am, like, there's this character that was supposed to be, holy and spiritual and everything, and there's this hidden character that was just like a
yeah,
barfly, or
yeah,
that just kind of like, and it could not reconcile, right? It was just this
yeah,
whatever, because it was going to extremes, right? I don't know if you
yeah.
felt that way too.
Oh, the last time I had a relapse, which ended up really waking my ass up, which,
Yeah,
so I'm glad for that. But I remember I had time off from work, I could afford it,
yeah,
and it was a dream come true. And I was spending tons of time meditating because I
yeah.
was still trying to get there. And I just remember thinking, like, after all these years of meditating, like, why does it hurt so much to be still with my,
Yeah.
and then I ended up drinking, and it was very clear, like, what I was hoping, the release and like authenticness that I was hoping to get from meditating and getting there, I could get instantly with
with
drinking, and
drinking. Yeah.
I would actually, I didn't want to go out and have fun. There was no motivation for that. I just wanted to get to where I could cry. And
I just, you know what I wanted to do is I just wanted to black out.
yeah,
It was funny, right? The body just wanted to kind of like, because he could not cry, did not want to feel any emotions and everything. And it just is, but it's funny because you know what, the next kind of like days, the regret, right, of doing that was
yeah,
hell. I don't know if you felt that way too. It's just like
oh
it
yeah,
was madness, right? So here was like
yeah,
meditating hungover, kind of like, then like nodding off, because because I went all out, so to speak.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Oh,
when people
brutal.
talk about hell, right, I'm like, that was hell.
Yeah,
Meditating, having clarity, and all of a sudden, the clarity was not working. So you go to another kind of like, you go to a bar, and then it was just madness until you're completely falling apart. It was just um
yeah,
because what was the suffering that was being kind of like, happening, was this, that there was something wrong with me.
yeah,
There was
yeah,
something there was something that needs to be fixed. There was something that needs to, and I would either go to alcohol or to meditation to fix that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was using that spirituality exactly like drugs or alcohol. Like
That's
I
what it
was just,
was. It was my high.
yeah,
It was my high. And when
totally.
I was not, when I became a dealer
Yeah,
of
yeah.
meditation, not drugs.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, man, because it really is,
I was getting
like,
high on my own supply, if you know what I mean, right?
yeah. That was the other story where you purposely participated by being super honest and got yourself canceled or whatever. I
Yeah.
just love that. I had, when I was hanging with my teacher, awesome. I love her. Um, but she's more focused on like trauma and awakening
Yeah.
and more embodied stuff. But while I was chilling, I had this like thought, or like almost like a daydream, and there was two of me, and one of them was the super simpleton that couldn't talk,
Yeah.
and he was awake,
Yeah.
or there was awakeness there, and he was just so comfortable and content, and it,
Yeah.
but he was just a farmer, and like nobody knew, he couldn't talk about it. And then there was this other like giving talks like at big events, just tying metaphysics and spirituality together, and just what a cutting edge gift to spirituality. And but he was in prison and he knew
Oh,
it,
wow.
and so it
Yeah.
was kind of showing me two lenses, and I'm like, I really want the farmer, but like part of me is like, no, I want to be able to talk about it and
Yeah.
get the accolades. And so that, I was like, how about that? Like, and so lately with the non-duality, there's been more of a openness to not take myself so seriously and not take,
Yeah. What's wrong with both? Both can exist at the same time. It's all an illusion. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's gonna like funny what happened with this character, right? Because I've been speaking for over a year doing this. And then you know what? There's no reason, but there's just a lot of passion. So you don't think
yeah,
about financial stuff. You know what I'm saying? when
yeah,
when
yeah.
you start talking about this, and when the year kind of like ends and you have to do your taxes, like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
So the
And that's the
simpleton,
other,
the simpleton character here is now
yeah,
working again. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
also speaking, right? But it's not
yeah,
speaking for the purpose of accolades or whatever. It's just speaking because there's no reason for it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
And there's
just
no one
expressed,
doing really it. It's just there's no choice really if you really look at it.
yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead. So you were going to say something.
Yeah, right in line with that. Like now I'm more curious to see what wants to express naturally, and I don't know what that is.
And
And
that's the same thing that was felt here, right? There was just like, I guess it's gonna speak, I guess, about this, because imagine being canceled as spiritual teacher and coming back. It's like, who would want that?
yeah,
especially
yeah,
especially when you come back, you basically announcing, well, there's really no one here. That's just dagger season, right? It's just gonna like, oh, he's just completely lost it or whatever. And yet, I'm saying, there's the passion, kind of like, it doesn't make sense logically. It doesn't make sense to do that, right? Because I could just
yeah,
easily go into the workforce and everything, and just be content at the same time, because there's no preference really. But
yeah,
the speaking happened, and a year later, it's like, I was like, oh wow, and I'm saying, this is just a story, but what a gift it is to talk to this,
yeah,
to talk
yeah,
to this without any barrier,
yeah,
without any you or I, what I'm saying? Although there's this idea of you and I, but just to speak without any filters, just to be finally be completely honest, even if it
yeah.
doesn't sound honest to other characters that would listen and be like, what do you mean? There's no one there.
That's the other cosmic humorous thing is like I had the thought that like if say I was speaking or something, because that part of me that still wants to be like, hey, look, mom and dad, I made it. It was
Yeah,
worth it.
yeah, yeah.
Like the message that we share is so absurd to someone
It's
that
so absurd. And it's funny,
so
right?
absurd.
Because I caught my dad one time. I was like, what the hell? I'm like, I'm hearing my voice. I went to the living room. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Don't watch it, dad. It goes against your belief system, and
Yeah,
I love you and everything. And then one time I caught my mom, listening to my videos. I'm like, oh, no, 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 mom. And you know what she said? I'm just proud of you.
yeah,
She's not even understanding any of it, right? It's just what is. I'm not, what the thing is, like, the Emerson would have wanted to basically parade this, like, look, you know what, I made it
yeah,
and everything. But when this speaking happened and everything, it is just what it is. It doesn't matter if your parents or know or not know about it, right?
yeah.
It doesn't even matter
So
if it's a feeling of like, look, mom, I made it. That's also the same thing. Who
yeah,
cares? Yeah.
yeah,
So if you want to speak about this, saying, please do, saying, it's wonderful to hear clarity. It's wonderful to hear sobriety. When every other, again, there's, it's just what is, when most of the people that are talking about this are just drunk.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah. I
they're
know what you
drunk
mean.
on the idea of awareness or whatever it is. It's okay. It's all right? But it's
Yeah,
drunkenness. So when there's just this clarity and sobriety and just saying that, well, it's just this, you can't
yeah,
really explain this, there's no knowledge about this, there's no wisdom about it. It's just this, it's just
mm,
plain, right? And it's just, and although it's just a story, right, the clarity and the honesty and the directness of it um is relieving to a lot of characters, although there are no
yeah,
characters, right, in the story anyway, right? It's just kind of like,
yeah,
oh, finally someone is just being kind of like blunt about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
One of the biggest thing that was holding on to, because I was basically a faith, hope, religious freak, if you really
yeah,
look at it, and I just basically
yeah,
morphed into spirituality. But Emerson was
yeah,
just that. So when Emerson became spiritual, not only he was, before he was talking to Jesus, but now secretly he was God.
yeah, yeah. Totally.
you know or you could call it, well, I am awareness now, I don't know, what I'm saying.
Right,
So it was
right.
such a big slap on the face, when the Emerson was knocked off, and you're like, oh shit. So everything that Emerson has ever thought about, awareness, consciousness, God, all of that, it was just a thought. Every
Yeah,
single thought, every single word that ever came up, right? And that's
yeah.
what the superiority complex was.
Shit. Amen.
Yeah, and that was my false sense of enlightenment. I got
Yeah.
enlightened, but who got enlightened? it's like, well, God did, but there's really, it's just all this. It's still intoxicated. It was still intoxicated with the idea of an outer, an inner. There's this inner awareness, outer whatever, right? It was just this,
Yeah.
all of this stuff, and there was a bit of sadness there. Saying when it was seen that that was just all a delusion, but the sadness is also the liberation
Mm-hmm.
that no one is watching me. I am not
Mm-hmm.
watching anyone. There's no I. It's just this emptiness that you can't even call that really. It's just this
Yeah.
magnificence that doesn't have any reason or purpose. And that's clarity, right? It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess you know what? Um, there's sobriety here now with words. I don't snort them anymore. The word.
Yeah. 100%.
I
Uh,
don't, what do you call that injection? I don't mainline it anymore, you know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
No, no mainlining
Yeah.
the quotes. Let me get a nice stream of quotes into my system that I
That's
can
what he
live on.
did. Or this supposedly, like sages and everything, because that was my supplier, right? That was kind of like, that
Yeah.
was my cartel.
Yep. Me too. Me too. Me
And
too.
that's what,
And
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, there was like a sense of awakened Tim, and like a knowing that like this is really hard and a lot of pressure to try to. I don't feel like it,
Yeah.
and but they say I am, and it makes sense. And but I still feel like imprisoned, and it just started to feel inauthentic. And I used to be as spiritual as they come, like I would have the clothing and the incense and had to be really nice about everything. And
Are we twins? Are we twins? Maybe we're twins. Did we just become best friends, Tim?
yeah,
The
I had
Step
a
Brothers quote,
feeling.
right?
Yeah, I had a feeling because your story, I was like, I probably a lot going on there. That's pretty similar. Um, but now I really appreciate non-duality for like backwards reasons than I would have thought even a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I kind of allergic to like spiritual.
I'm the same. I'm the same. I was so spiritual that, that I was basically kind of like, mainline through it, right? It was
Yeah,
like it was, I was, I guess, I was like, getting high on my supply, right? It was just,
yeah,
I would meditate for 3 to 4 hours. I would, pull out my harmonium and started, singing, chanting and
yeah,
everything. I would pull out my mala beads, incense, the whole shebang, right? And then, of course,
yeah,
there's 8 hours of me teaching,
yeah.
spirituality. And then I would be getting, tons of messages of people that would look up to me as on a pedestal and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
but that facade, what I'm saying, starts to wear thin because you're kind of like, I can't get high off this anymore. What's going on?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's a sham, right?
yeah,
For lack of a better word, it's like I'm fooling myself that I am
yeah,
this, right? I'm fooling
yeah,
myself that I am awareness, or I'm just really deluding myself that I am that.
yeah. I know.
Because it's just an idea, right? And I kept on
Yeah.
going back to the Upanishads and all of these books and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I just need to, I'll do selfless service, right? I'll do this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this appearance of duality, what I'm saying, when things got really rough, no amount of meditation, what I'm saying? No amount,
Mm-hmm.
anything could cure,
Yeah,
because sadness is also it.
yeah, yeah.
That messiness is also it. So the more that I resisted the messiness, the more I got buried in it.
Same, same here. And I knew on some unconscious level that it wasn't panning out,
Yeah,
but like the blinders on and was like cycling through, like, okay, now I get it. At this time of my life, this will now get me there.
yeah.
And it kept going around and around, and like, but some part of me knew, like, was so sad that like it's not really working out, you know, and it's like a dead end, and
It was, and it just, and you know, the dead end has a cycle, and they always end up at the end, and it's just this cyclical nightmare, right?
yeah,
It's like Groundhog Day in hell. You know, it was
yeah,
just this circular thing, and there's this, there's no one sensing, but there's this not knowing, but there's just this something that is kind of like that. There's something off. It's like you know, when you're dreaming at night and it feels absolutely real. There's this vividness that you can like, this is not really happening, or this
yeah,
should not be happening. It's like
yeah,
I got trapped in a loop somewhere, and this is not
yeah,
what is. This is
yeah,
just this idea, this veil, or whatever seems to be happening, or this is
yeah,
intoxication. It's kind of like somehow you got drugged or spelled, you know what I'm saying, something that,
yeah,
and you're caught in that loop over and over and over again, and you're
yeah,
trying to get out of it, but the one that's trying to get out of it is the spell itself.
yeah,
Yeah. Is the
yeah,
intoxication itself, because
yeah,
Tim or Emerson is just intoxication, basically, if you really look at it, right? It's just this idea, it's just this concept of just this yeah, it's like a drug.
mhm,
And
mhm,
then when the drug just keeps on, you know, the drug can only drug,
yeah,
the illusion can only illusion,
yeah,
the thought can only come up with thoughts. So it goes into the cyclical motion of thoughts,
yeah,
thoughts, you know, addiction, illusion, words. So I was like, at one point I was just seeking in words. I'm like, what? And then it all clicks, right? You're like, I'm just really looking at a word, looking for more words. So all I'll ever do is just words, and I am a word. I is a word.
mhm,
Separation is a word.
mhm,
So when the words dissolve, because there's no one that has come up with words, it's just it's the whole um spell. It's like an enchantment of words. It's kind of like,
mhm.
and there's just this silence, and this silence is just so profound and loud. You're like, you can't help but laugh about it. You're like, what the hell?
Ah,
Or
that's
cry.
it. Like, yeah,
Or both
you know,
at the same time.
the touching into that, because I don't know any other. I just know that I wasn't there touching in, and
Yeah.
it is impossible to describe. But then I would come back, you know, and then it was like now a new task was to do whatever I need to do for that to happen again, which is
Yeah.
back in the enchantment. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it got yeah, it just got so cyclical. But thankfully, it got to the point where that was finally seen, and it was
Yeah.
kind of fuck this, I give up. Like give
Yeah.
up.
Because it's always there. The enchantment is always there. It's just kind of like, you know, and there's no one choosing. But when you think that you're choosing, that's the enchantment. When you think that you're
Yeah,
doing, that's the enchantment. When you moment that you think,
yeah,
that's the intoxication, is the thoughts, right? Because it's just wow. But there's nothing wrong with thoughts,
yeah,
but the enchantment with thoughts is just another thought, right? So it's just this mirage, right? You're just kind of like
yeah,
creating this, although there's no one creating, it's just this appearance, and getting caught up in it, right? It's madness. It's like I've had this high on mushrooms
yeah.
that there was this perceived fantasy of what reality was. When I got out of it, I'm like, what the hell was that?
Mhm.
So there was this illusion that I died, you know, and I the body of Emerson, you know, ended up decaying. It became fertilizer, and
Mhm.
it became this plant, and this plant grew to be this stuff, and this plant became like um Adam and Eve. Then it became, you know,
Mhm.
Hitler. It became Michael Jackson, Gandhi,
Mhm.
whatever, you know, all of the popular figures. And then I was like, I really believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what, when I believe that, I was almost like that intoxication led to more intoxication because I was looking for that high.
Yeah.
I was
Same
looking
here.
like, I'm like, maybe if I do spirituality, then I'll be everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. And from psychedelic experiences, the same mind that was perceiving spirituality in that way was perceiving those psychedelic experiences, and it really was convinced of things, and that I have to become everything.
Yeah,
And God, it's maddening. It's
it
pure
is.
madness.
So to me, it's just a high if you really look at it.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like a
Yep.
drug.
And I know lately I've been noticing that the areas where I get the most identified is like discomfort and like trying to be a good guy or spiritual guy.
Yeah.
And like you said, that itself is the enchantment, like the thinking and the
Yeah,
self.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
But
it's
then
funny
it
because
like,
there's no good guy or bad guy. There's no guy at all, right? That's the enchantment. It's just this cyclical thing, and getting stuck in that and maintaining that, and it goes into a different kind of like thing. It's funny, right? Because the me is the high, the character is the high, and then when you don't want to get high anymore, it's kind of like, let me get off this high, let me drop this me, but that's just another high
yeah,
again.
yeah,
Yeah,
total.
yeah. Or
Because
or the other. Sorry, go ahead.
I was, I was doing the not doing, trying to.
Look at me, I'm not doing this.
uh, and then noticing too, like when I would get uncomfortable and feel just uncomfortable, like the self would then like perpetuate through trying to solve it. And I noticed how that didn't work, and that it was so uncomfortable anyway, like the resisting of it, and just that it was just like, all right, the jig's up, like that whole thing.
Yeah, it's funny because the jig is always up, but somehow, it's like it always gets caught, right? But it comes
Yeah,
up with another kind of like,
yeah,
another scheme, right? Another kind of like con, right? It's kind of like, it's like the
totally.
it's like the self is the ultimate con artist, right? So it gets
Uh-huh.
caught up all the time, but they're like, no, 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 no. But there's actually a higher self.
Mm. Right, right,
Yeah. You're just not
100%.
seeing it. There's just the higher self, right? And then when you say, well, if there's no self, how could there be a higher self? And they're like, no, 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 you're not connected to the source. I'm like, oh, and you buy that again, right? And then all of a sudden it becomes like the absolute consciousness, the pure awareness, all of these thoughts.
Yeah,
And then somebody will say, well, that's not really a thought. That's just another thought. Everything that will
mm-hmm.
come out is a thought, right? There's no
Mm-hmm.
way out of it, right? So it
Yeah,
just keeps on
no way
coming
out.
up. It's just maintaining that it's right.
Yeah,
It's just maintaining that
yeah,
it's correct. It's just
yeah,
maintaining that it has it knows, right? Or
yeah.
it's funny because on Facebook I just have a whole bunch of people that will just give me like this kind of like, this big kind of like comment and everything. Um there's nothing to debate about,
Yeah,
because even
no,
debating about that is just, it's just what is, right? And it's
yeah,
just coming from a place of knowing,
yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with it, right? But there's still intoxication with words and meanings and everything. um so there, yeah, the freedom here is that the freedom is just in everything.
yeah,
The freedom in deleting those comments and saying that, I don't want my mom to read that. That's freedom
yeah,
as well. The freedom in
yeah,
not responding to it, that's freedom.
yeah.
And the
But
freedom, yeah.
that whole game doesn't have to be tied into it, and it can just
No.
whatever you genuinely do, like delete or not delete. It's
Yeah, because
just
there's no
it.
one doing it, right? There's no self anymore that's kind of like saying that, oh, I have to protect the self and be right about it.
Yeah,
So,
how's this gonna look? I should take the higher ground.
no,
All the bullshit that.
it's all bullshit. It's all
Yeah,
bullshit. It's
and then
so go
they
ahead.
had the like a lot of the reporting in the awakening community was like, you go through like the unraveling of self, and so like it is, and that was my next cosign to just stay in self, because it was like, oh, this is what's supposed to happen to lead to the awakening, the awakened Tim. And
As
so it was like
as
all the
long
signs got
yeah,
hijacked into evidence of, even though it's going nowhere, it's actually, I perceived it as, this is good. This is how it's supposed to go. And
yeah. Isn't it funny that why does enlightenment need authority or awakening need authority or
yeah,
a, it's like the authority is what keeps it. The authority, saying the kind of like and people don't like hearing this. The moment that
yeah,
there's a belief or a in an outer or a higher source or whatever, what I'm saying, or even the
yeah,
opposite, disbelief, like atheism or something. It's not either atheism or a belief system. It's nothing at all because both are ideas.
yeah,
It's
yep.
like, for example, how will this cup know that it's a cup? It will never know it's a cup.
Hmm,
How will God know it's a God? He will never know because there's only
totally.
this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It cannot
yeah,
know or unknow itself. That's
right.
impossible. It's already this.
Yeah,
And this the way that sometimes the way that I communicate it rubs a lot of people the wrong way because they're like, he's laughing at at nihilism. No, what I'm saying? For
yeah,
some odd reason in the story, this character, and this is just a story as well, right? It's just a story. This character is a better friend, a better son, a better, an honest character now. When I was in spirituality, I was full of it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It was just,
yeah,
I was an absent son. I didn't really I looked at all my brothers and my sisters inferior.
yeah,
Um, and all of my old high school friends, I'm like, oh, you know what? They're just, um,
yeah.
but
But
guess what happened when everything fell apart in the story? The high school friends, my family, what I'm saying, was the one that basically said, we know you're a fuck up. And we still love you.
yeah, and that was my thing. Like I just became clear on with my family was this loop of like, well, they don't value me and accept me for who I am, and so, but I wasn't allowing myself to be who I am
Yeah.
genuinely, and then at the same them for being less than me, and I know how to live their lives better than them if they would just listen. And it was like, and that's like what spirituality in that way did for me. And the wool it pulled over my eyes while I'm like, I got to be humble and honest and transparent. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, I'm like, I, I'm up to no good, and I'm unconsciously not seeing myself,
Yeah.
uh, and any of the like stuff in life. Like I'm not seeing it, and brutal
It's brutal, yeah,
cul-de-sac.
because when there's this lens of superiority and spirituality and holiness and all that kind of stuff like that, right? It's almost like
Yeah,
it's almost like a bypassing. It's
yeah,
like, it's like, oh, you don't understand, it's a lot of gaslighting. You don't understand because you know what? You're not in this space yet.
yep. Oh, 100%. And then the closer you are to awakening, it's like, well, only 5% of the world can even understand where I'm at. So like,
Yeah.
I got the ultimate card for.
Yeah, you get the carte blanche, you know what I'm saying, for,
Mm,
it's just it's criminal.
yeah, yeah.
It's there's this humility in the disappearance of the choice maker. There's this almost like that the character is free,
Yeah.
and what for whatever, you know what I'm saying, and for some odd reason, you know, saying for you know, and this is just another narrative, another story, right? Apparent characters that have dropped away did not turn evil or, you know, become
Hmm.
abusive or something. It basically um knocked them off their pedestal,
Yeah.
the pedestal of superiority, the pedestal of enlightenment, the
Yeah.
pedestal of awakening, the pedestal of whatever. And then
Yeah.
their imaginary support system, which is that, you know, I am God, you know, and it's just all of this kind of stuff is just, it's just destroyed. And there's
Yeah.
just this it's a lens of clarity of like, there's nothing here, but this is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It doesn't need a special knowledge, it doesn't need a special initiation, it doesn't need it's like all of the gates that you thought were closed are open.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the paradise that think that you've lost is actually an illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
And I,
paradise is in paradise, there's no other than paradise, that kind of thing. Again, that's just another
to,
story. But yeah, it was just like it's like everything that is in the framework of your understanding or your belief system just shatters. You're like,
yeah.
okay, so what now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's where I've been at, and I'm watching the patterns play out, and then like relief, a little bit of relief has been coming as it's like kind of
good.
off the hook from this whole game. And yeah, I really respect and value like the non-duality speakers, because there's no authority and they're not claiming to have anything, and it's just very honest and humble, like truly humble,
It
not
is,
the
yeah.
pseudo humble.
No, no. When I say that there's nothing special here, I really mean it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright. I was, you know, I do one-on-ones in person, you know, saying sometimes that's the best because they see that there's really nothing special, but at that humility and that clarity, right? They're like, okay, then you know what? Then this is just the same. Yeah, I said
Yeah.
there's no difference, right? You know, from a person, you know, that's doing one-on-one, there's no borders anymore. There's no more barriers. There's no screen,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah.
it's just basically emptiness talking to itself now.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it, right? Because there's just
Yeah.
this, you know what, this there's this appearance of this apparent world, although there's it's just an appearance, right? And then when I talk to you or one-on-ones, when I do my meetings, there's just this kind of like, okay, you know what, I can unbutton my belt now, let my gut out, you know, and say it's really nothing.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
Yeah,
Imagine that. Imagine that instead of this uptight, polished,
that's what it is. It
you
was just
know,
this uptight, you know, like, you know, yeah, you know, I do, you know, 100 sit-ups every day and that kind of thing. That's
yeah,
it's like spiritual is the new corporate, right? It's
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, totally,
it's
man.
keeping up
Totally.
appearances, right? You know, it's
Big time. Big time.
it is,
Uh,
it is. It is. I get comments about like, why do you wear the outfits that you use? I'm like, who cares? Who
yeah,
cares?
who
Who
cares?
cares?
But it is funny because a lot of the ideas I had in my head around spirituality and what I was supposed to be like and how special I would be if I
Yeah.
was and really just seeing how such crap that is really, and also it's like innocent,
At the
like I
same
didn't,
time,
yeah, but it is like,
it is. It compared to like when you're a little kid daydreaming of ice cream.
yeah.
It's the same thing, right? You're
Yeah.
daydreaming of basically a special character named Tim, you know, that is revered and respected all over the world. Um, and so holy that it doesn't even eat anymore. It just takes little, kind of like inhale of
Right.
once an hour inhaling of air to minimize the harm that it's done.
It's like that. It's like that. Oh my God. So wild. And I remember direct distinctly having this feeling that like having a how I'm seeing things now where it's like, oh, so then me, me, the seeming me, it'll just be whatever it is naturally without effort. And who knows what that'll look like. Like for you,
Yeah.
you're speaking. Uh, I know other people became stand-up comedians, and even though they sucked at it. But it was like when I wasn't in when I knew I wasn't in control, like certain things just wanted to happen as me, through me, and it was just liberation because they didn't have any.
Yeah, well, a friend of mine that I talked to, this was like more than a year ago. I think I talk about him a lot, right? So he was doing this, foreman construction that was paying a lot of money. And then one day, you know what, because there's no more me, that it was just dropped away, basically kind of like said, I have this crazy thing that I just want to do things that I love. So he
Yeah,
basically started kind of like, creating these tables that were like, out of epoxy and just art. He was just doing a lot of art. He never really considered himself an artist. And I talked to him last week and he goes, dude, I make more money now. And I'm like, how did that happen? It was just this love for it, right? He goes, I just didn't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? It's just what's happening. And I was so stressed, because that position of being a foreman, I don't know what they do in construction. He goes, it
yeah,
required a lot of me trying to maintain me. So when he was
yeah,
just doing his art, it was just, there was no one there. He goes, I like this. And he does it really, really well, right? He sells like these pieces now, and he's just been 6 months into it. And it's just kind of like yeah, life
great.
seemingly, and again, this is not a prescription, or there's no cause and effect in this one, right? But there's just freedom. It could be the opposite. It could be an artist that basically goes, I just really want a structure to be a foreman. That could be the opposite,
Right, right.
and make lots of money that way. And that kind of thing. It's whatever it is just welcomed, because there's no more gatekeeper. There's no more authority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that
And I
secret.
don't,
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't have to be one anymore either because I was always unknowingly measuring everything against my spiritualness,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's allowed. That's not. That means they're not far along. I'm like this because I am, and just it was just like, whew,
Yeah. 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 Totally. So it's kind of funny coming into this like about more than a year ago, when it was by accident that I started speaking,
mm,
because one of the non-duality speakers could not make it. He was not feeling well, so I just started speaking. There were no plans, but when
yeah,
that happened, when it just kind of like, I'm like, wow, there's actually just so much, aliveness in this. There's so much passion in this. And it kind of like my friend who did the art, what I'm saying, just making all of this stuff.
yeah,
There was no resistance to it whatsoever. There was no effort
yeah,
even, right? It was just this effortless happening. And
yeah,
and I knew coming into it that it doesn't make money. People assume, this is really funny, right? That people assume that you do this to make money. It's the opposite. It's the love of it. It's the love of it, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's like for every I don't know, 10 one-on-ones that I do, 7 of them are free. It's
yeah,
just, there's just no care for it, right? But also, saying knowingly getting into this, that's what was happening, or just I'd rather make money working, you know what I'm saying, and continue
yeah,
what I love.
yeah. I
So
totally
there's
get
this
that.
there's this seeming kind of like, how could you go back to work and everything, like, wow, there's the love for this speaking, and this speaking is not sustainable, right?
Yeah,
But it's okay, saying. And then there's some speakers, I can't travel because of my mom right now, so I would have been traveling and everything. But for any speakers that want to speak about it, about this, it's just love. It's just love speaking. It's just
Yeah.
unconditional love speaking and expressing and everything. And there's nothing special about it. There's no one special
Yeah.
here. And the expression is just like, this is so great to talk about. Like talking to you,
Yeah.
like, saying it's like, it's so
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah.
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 So if you want to do it, do it. Saying, well, there's no one, choosing to do it. Right.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's really.
it's just love.
Yeah.
And then if you become a super famous, non-duality speaker that makes a lot of money, that's okay. That's okay too.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever. It.
Whatever.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
this sense that all the ideas I had before, I don't care what my life looks like. I just don't want to be like trying to shape it
Yeah.
and just efforting and struggling and stressing. And if it wants, I'm a carpenter, so if I'm just gonna be like a goofy carpenter,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's no it's funny when I was at my work, right? There were people who are like, how do you have this energy? Do you have no idea that I'm talking about non-duality? And
yeah.
that's the most common thing. They're like, there's something about you that, because there's just this contentment there. I'm like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be making money.
Yeah.
What I'm saying?
Yeah. Just show up and
I show up,
flow.
saying there's just this aliveness here, and it's just fun. And then I'm doing this Saturday, Sunday. It's just like, this is so great, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is perfection.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
perfection. It's just when I was a spiritual teacher, I was like, oh, like it was just pain and suffering, right? It was
Yeah.
pain and
Oh
suffering
yeah.
because I was maintaining this image and everything. And I would be checking out all the other spiritual teachers. I'm like, oh, I should wear more linen and maybe one more mala bead around my neck.
Yep. Yeah.
You did that too, right?
Oh yeah. In my own way, because I wasn't like at teacher
Yeah.
level, but in my own way. And I would be embarrassed that I smoked or vape
Yeah.
and at like yoga, but we're all talking about accepting each other for who you are
Yeah.
and being your authentic self. And I'm like hiding smoking because they'll judge me for smoking.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah. I know what I'm saying.
what is this?
It's like
I,
it's like me being a spiritual teacher, like talking about, like, purity, purifying the body and everything. And then when no one's looking, nighttime comes, like being a barfly, smoking, doing whatever, saying, just being
yeah.
intoxicated, and coming back the next day, I'm saying, with my, I remember this, at 5 o'clock in the morning with my head tilted down, my thumb holding my, because I was so hungover. And then
Mm.
everybody thought that they're like, oh, he's in deep meditation. he's he's
Yeah.
meditating for all of us.
Yeah. For all of us. Probably only for us because he doesn't even pray for himself.
Yeah, he's
Oh.
so selfless, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's just so perfect. but but I'm going to stop this recording, but I'm going to talk to you about something. um
Cool.